the band was any band is pretty much my identity. So not being able to keep following, like being who you are aiming to be, it does hit you.
Welcome, everyone, to This Was The Scene, the podcast that takes a look back at the late 90s, early 2000 punk scene. I am your host, Mike Doyle. Before we start, do me a favor and send this podcast to a friend right now. Hit pause and just text someone that would love this podcast a link to the podcast itself. This whole thing is just completely DIY, so I need everyone's help getting this thing out there. And if you've been listening for free for 4 years, then this could be a little payment. And if you don't want to do it, that's totally fine. But it's very helpful. Threadline were a post-hardcore band from New Jersey. The life of the band was short-lived, but this was like one of the very first bands that I met when my first band started playing shows. So it was really cool to talk to Craig about that time because this is like the origins of me getting in the scene. It was the same time where he was getting into it. I just really enjoyed reminiscing about that whole time and remembering all the projects he did, and one of them was promoting shows under NOISExtra. And from there, he went on to do Elemae and a ton of other bands. So this is the third NJ Focus interview in a row that I kept referencing for the past 3 episodes, minus that repost that I did last week of Buddyhead. So if anyone listening is not from New Jersey, it's going to be, again, it's very Jersey focused, but there's still some good stuff in it. And then next week, I'm going to jump back out and not be so Jersey focused. But yeah, anyway, so I got Craig on the Skype, and this is what we chat about. The NJ show where someone stole the cannonball. Joe Pulito taking forever with replies. Sorry, Joe. How we started throwing shows with NOISExtra. Elizabeth from Hot Topic. The Shades Apart show in White Meadow Lake. Camber. The Ignition rebrand because of Oasis. Did he tour overseas? Do we love writing or playing music these days? And a ton more. Make sure you check out his latest band, the Atlantic Union Project, over at Bandcamp. There's a link in the show notes that you can click on and go there. And that's all I got to say. So feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with anyone who would love some punk rock nostalgia. With that said, let's get started. Like, we're going to start with Threadline and like how you get in the scene, talk about Threadline, how that was also happening at the same time as NOISExtra. You know, just certain shows, especially the Shades Apart show that we all played, and like that, there's a photo that I posted on the Lanemeyer account of like a few months ago from that show where we all had our hands in a circle, kind of like a cheers. Did you see that photo?
I think I might have did I message you that photo like last year or 2 years ago or whenever?
You might have. It's such a funny photo because it's all of us just sitting around in a circle. It's us, you guys, and we were Congress of Cow at the time, so it was that, Threadline, Shades Apart, and then some other band where they all had striped shirts on.
That was Seething Gray.
See, yes, that's it. Okay, actually, I found it. I'm gonna send you a link through Skype, but I did credit you. It was House Without Walls is your Instagram.
Where did you send me the link? I'm looking right now.
I put it in the Skype chat.
I gotta find out how to get. Oh, there it is. Yep, that photo. Wow.
Well, I think we met you, and we'll get back to how you got in the scene. But I think
Sure.
I want to talk about how we met real quick because me, Chris, Andy, and Jeff were in Congress of Cow, which was before Lanemeyer, and then you guys were Threadline. But either we met you guys at a show, or we played that Denville show you're talking about where they stole the cannonball.
That was, I think, the one and only show that. Oh my gosh, I'm sure you'll have these spacey moments, and I'm sure you get these because from plenty of people because it's so long ago. Member of Congress of Cow. He lives, I believe, even currently, he might live in Sussex County or at least out Warren or Sussex County out that way. And he actually threw the show. I think it was the only show after 2 years of me doing shows there without a problem.
Andy did it. He was the guitar player. He was the youngest one of the band.
He's in that blue shirt in the photo, correct?
Let me see. Yes. Yeah, that's right. 'Cause, yeah, he has the Nord shirt on. That's funny.
And he's a good guy. Like I have no qualms. I didn't even know that like he was the one but he actually brought this up in the last 3 years when I ran into him at Crow's in Sparta. And I've seen him over the years, but I guess I never really connected that to him. And he was like, yeah, I put on that show when when the someone took the cannonball. I mean, you probably want to get into that, but I was like, oh, and in the back of my brain, I was like, oh, damn, that's why all the shows ended. I knew it was like someone from Congress, but
Oh man, I didn't realize. I think that might have been said in these interviews, maybe with people I talked to in the past. But I always
okay,
thought. Currently, I forgot that Andy put that show on. Because remember, I think what I'm remembering now is when he put it on, we were like, dude, why are we playing so early? He's like, we're a new band. We can't play later. We're like, fuck that. You're putting the show on. We should
right,
play
right.
later, which is so stupid.
Do you know who else played that show? I'm trying to think of that show because I might have been there even to attend, or I wasn't. I'm not sure. If you tell me,
I bet I can find this on the Flyers page for the NJPB. Do you know what year was that? 98?
the shows that I were like between like 95 and 97. It needs to be like 96 or 7, I would assume.
Was that that show, was that the last time you put a show on because of that whole
No,
incident?
that was such a good location. Like it just seemed to be doing well for, for the handful of 10 shows or whatever, maybe less. I'd have to count. So that was the American Legion of Denville, right? And we moved to the VFW of Rockaway is where I moved the NOISExtra shows. And we played with you 3 times. 2 shows that I definitely threw. I was looking at some old flyers, and that's going to also deep dive. It was either like Franklin or
Was Franklin, that wasn't the phone booth? Because I know that's in Sussex County.
correct. That's the phone booth, but it was a different hall, like behind the main road in Franklin. Like it was like, I want to say like there was a big shopping center, and then there was a Franklin Legion, like IDK might have been on it, and Squiggy. Remember that band? I mean, total like genre hopping from, which as a lot of these shows were. I sent the folder of NOISExtra ones and some extra I had over for the archive, like emailed it over for the archive. I want to say 3 times. Each time he would like email back after the link. It must have been a WeTransfer link expired for a week, or something, however long that is.
Yeah.
And it expired, and he was always like, "Oh, hey Craig, I didn't get that. Can you resend it?" And I honestly, after the 3rd one, I was like, I know. After third one, I was like, okay, this is just a little silly. I was like, I guess I should just stop bothering him just to get these up. And I even had sent in some old Threadline tracks that are nowhere to be found. Of course, this, because it was all before all of this social stuff, so it's not uploaded anywhere. It may have been like mp3.com era. What was the era of like 95 and 94 and
Shit, man. I didn't really get on a computer until it was like 2000. Like it was 2001, and I was living with Barker from Lanemeyer out in LA, and he had a computer, so I would just like download like music and shit through there.
yeah.
But actually, I found on the archive there's the NOISExtra flyer for Squiggy, Humble Beginnings, Nutshell, another rinse.
So maybe they are up now. Like, is there a way to search under like a tag for similar flyers or not really?
No, you just go to the archive and you can click on posters, and then in there's years. So I clicked on 97, and you just kind of have to. You have like you have an overview on the page, and then you can click on them and just go through them. But I'm trying to find the one you're talking about.
Like I said, I don't know what Joe, like maybe he did wind up grabbing, because like if you forward a WeTransfer link, it's not going to actually show up as a receipt on the sender's end if it's not like clicked directly through it. At a certain point, he actually might have downloaded and put that up. I don't think the Threadline EP or final song or whatever we called it.
You have nothing on there, because I was looking before to see if I could find any old songs.
I might have to pester him one more time, Joe, just to see if he, maybe he was like, "Who's Threadline?"
No, he takes. I've messaged Joe before, and love Joe Pulito, but he'll take
exactly.
Sometimes he's like replied a month or 2 later, and I'm like, I know you're a busy man, but Jesus Christ.
I know. I mean, like you probably agree. Then you start feeling like a tool that you're bothering someone. I definitely have a complex like that.
Oh, I have no fear. I'm like, hey,
okay.
Following up, where are we at with this? Like, I literally, because I've worked for myself for so long, I've done sales. I do this with people who are prospects. I'm like, hey, following up, did this get lost? And at the end, I'm like, hey, and I'll like send kind of a, hey, I'll stop bothering you, and that's when they're like, no, don't, you're not bothering me, and then I get the final reply.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I have no shame. I don't give a shit.
Okay. I just felt like I would leave him alone. I'm just looking at the email. I just wanted to see, the last time was August of 2021. Yeah, the first one is in November of 20. And then maybe I'll bother them again. And Joe, if you do listen to this, you might be bothered.
Yeah, that's the one I get aggressive.
Yeah, right.
All right, so let's hone this in and start the whole structure, even though I'll keep a lot of that in. Because Threadline wasn't a punk band. You guys were more of like a rock, like indie rock sounding band. I want to say I always lead with how did you get involved in the scene? Actually, no, I am going to leave that. Like, how did you get involved in the scene? Because it's interesting to me because you guys were not a pop punk band, and it's like, so how did that style embed itself into this like pop punk emo ska thing?
So when you say indie rock, do you qualify post-hardcore as indie rock, or would you like? Because I've always thought of Threadline and who our influences were, and probably who we got to similar at times back when we were so young and being impressioned by, was the DC post-hardcore scene.
Yeah, now that you say it, because for some reason I'm listening to, how do you say it, Elemae?
Elemae was definitely way more indie alternative. Yeah.
Okay, so I think I was thinking that you sounded more like that in Threadline, but I guess you did have some like yelling song. I mean, because I can't, it was 20 something years ago, but I remember, didn't you like have one of those microphones that was like the silver one that it wasn't like a regular, you know what I'm talking about?
Yep. So I'm trying to think that if that was Elemae, I'm trying to think if I did have it in.
No,
Threadline.
that was Threadline. What I'm talking about with that.
Oh, then maybe I did get it then. Yes, and I had one of those silver replica mics. At a certain point, I actually like painted it black, and then it got so like probably the paint probably didn't stick enough, so it got like really scratchy, beat up looking. But yes, I did used to put that on the mic instead of a regular mic.
Yeah, for some reason I don't know why that made me think that you guys were an indie band. But yeah, but now I'm thinking about it more, and your voice, like I guess it was more of like a Revelation sounding band.
Yeah, yep, that would be very akin to who we loved. From Discord to Revelation, I would say we were right in the middle of that pocket of some discordant, shouty stuff, some sing along kind of singy stuff. We just call it that. And then the rhythms from the bass and drums and the guitars to blend that, I guess, if that makes sense.
How did you get involved in the scene and then lead that into Threadline? And then we'll kind of talk from there into the history of the band.
Okay, yeah. So that's a great question, and I feel very at home about like when I think to that time and getting involved in our New Jersey, subgenres of rock and punk and indie, et cetera, and the crossover that Mike, that like so very well, and I know so very well of having friends in all of them. Mine was based on the shows that Chris Vaglio would put on, and I've told him this. Like I've caught up with him years later. There was a good amount of years that we weren't in contact with each other. Just not even by geography, just life leading separate ways. And when we came back, and it could be a good 10 years now. I'd be like, Chris, like when I started doing shows and everything that happened after that, I said, I still call that the ground zero point of like, oh my gosh, I was trying to figure out young bandhood from high school because I really wasn't in a band in high school at all. My first show was actually like the summer after high school. Like the summer after high school is when I actually like played a first like 2 songs to perform for someone, is what I'm trying to say. Getting into the scene after a bunch of early bands that only played 1 show or 2 shows and lasted less than a year, maybe 6 months, and floundered, etc. And then all of a sudden, when Threadline happened, and I met some other post-punk bands, whether it be punk or post-hardcore, I'm just blending that together. It was going to Wharton American Legion. It was going to, I think there was another spot. He was also doing a distro stall, all his distro tables, I should say.
What's his name? Rick to Life?
No, I'm still talking about Chris Vaglio, but he had another friend.
He was doing that.
Yeah. Chris was doing a distro, and I actually started inviting him to do, like, you might remember this. He actually did distro tables at the NOISExtra shows, at least some of them. Whenever he could make it, I said, "You're welcome to come and set up your." I would love a table because I was I was such a music fan and scouring the record stores. Like I was like that guy, and I kind of still am. I was like, I would love to have you come to the show so people can thumb through because I want to look through and I want to buy them myself at every at every show. So bring the 7 inches and bring the the CDs and whatever other paraphernalia he had. He was doing November's Fire, and I forget which band came first. It was either Ember. Do you remember Ember?
Yes, I remember that name.
And November's Fire was like a hardcore band. Ember was indie rock with his girlfriend, now wife. He's actually married to the singer of Ember. This was before they did Situation at 1200 with the My Favorite Citizen guy, Scott.
Yeah, I talked to Scott, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And that was kind of the era that I'm talking about that really opened my eyes in many ways to want to throw shows, to want to get a distro, and we could even get into that. I actually had my own distro in years up to that, and I would think back like Chris was the catalyst to that, And so, I mean, Mike, I guess just to reel that in, the catalyst was going to other shows, which were his. That got me into paying attention to the flyers on the walls and going to these other Legion Hall shows, which would be like, New Providence was one. And then there was the ones down in Central Jersey. Oh, and there was the Boonton, Laura from Boonton here. That was definitely Threadline era. And we played the Boonton Elks Lodge here. And I think there was another on Church Street. Wait, is that the Church Street? Or is there something else?
Well, there was the Elks Lodge, and then there was the Knights of Columbus.
Yeah, there's two, and that was smaller, right? That was a smaller spot.
She told me, because I interviewed her about that, and she talked about both, and I still just forget everything people tell me. But they were right down the street from each other. One of them got closed, and they moved. I believe they moved everything else to the Knights of Columbus as the one she utilized more so, which actually is doing shows still to this day. I found out.
That Knights of Columbus, which maybe it is that one. I'm forgetting. Just to preface, I think you might realize I live in Boonton now. For the past 20 years, I've lived in Boonton, and I love the fact that like that Boonton Elks Lodge is right here in town, and the Knights of Columbus that we're getting at. There's a few other halls, but not from the punk rock world. But when music places pop up here in Boonton, I'm always like, the new guard, the new. So someone else is carrying the baton now in this era, and we had an all ages place, 2 different names that came and went. Unfortunately, now we actually have a new all ages spot right on Main Street, but below Main Street. It's like you go downstairs in Boonton as well. So I feel good that Boonton keeps on carrying some kind of punk and indie kind of all ages place for kids to go to.
This is actually super random, and I just want to touch on it for a second. But did you see do you know Barstool Sports at all?
Yes.
Did you see when he went to that, he got a pizza from that Indian restaurant on Boonton Main Street?
Oh, I live so close to that. Yes.
Yeah, and it blew up, and then he was going around Parsippany, and my old business coach was in the background of one of his videos where he turns around and Porter was like, that guy fucked at Woodstock. It was like my old business coach from when I was living in Jersey.
I didn't see that. No, I didn't see it.
But I just had to point that out. So basically, so as you're going to shows and stuff like that. So when does Threadline form, and when do you guys start playing shows? Is that around the same time as you're doing XSDB?
I didn't do XSDB. What do you mean?
No, not XSDB.
NOISExtra.
NOISExtra. Wow, totally fucked that one up.
I was like, I was probably at some of those shows with you.
You're like, I'm not Heath. I'm not Heath Miller.
right. I'm not Heath. I was probably at. I was definitely at some XSDB shows. I was like, I'm sure we were standing, nearby. Yes, I would say when Threadline, it was pretty soon after we got involved in the scene that I was like, I want to find my own place to do this. I want to be able to put on shows so we could play more. You're not always welcome into spots that you don't know who's throwing it. They maybe have a little clique of bands here and there. So just to try to make our ends, and we were trying to make our ends by playing shows. But I was like, if I can put one on in my area, put it on close to my town, then I can invite other bands on. Then you become friends with them, and then you're trading shows, and they're helping you get shows. I mean, obviously that still exists today, and it did before us. I'm sure, to a degree. I think the punk underground is really what nurtured that foundation.
It's funny as you're talking about this. Certain memories are starting to come up, and I'm trying to think of how we got connected with you, because what was your drummer's name?
Oh, Chad Gaynor.
Chad, yeah. So Chad, he was dating Elizabeth at the time. Remember her? She worked at Hot Topic, short blonde hair.
Yep, can't forget her. Yep.
We used to go in there because Andy, who we had mentioned prior, was obsessed with her.
Oh, like he shouldn't have been and obsessed?
No, not like a
Oh,
creepy way. Like, no, he was just like, a young guy just seeing a really hot girl 'cause she was super hot.
well, I guess what I was saying, but was Chad already with her? And that's what I meant. Like, shouldn't be. Like, was he like?
No, he was more,
Okay.
he was like, she's so hot, we have to go to Hot Topic just because I have to like see her, but not, it's like, it's a young kid he was a couple years younger than us. So he was like probably 15 at the time and she was, I think like 18, 19 or something. I remember we would always go in there and then we found out either we got connected to you because became friends with her. Either we got connected to you guys through her, or we had been playing a show with you guys, and then we put the pieces together that she was dating him, and we're like, oh shit.
Yeah, I'm trying to think then if Chad might have introduced, like Chad or Elizabeth or both, might have introduced you guys to us. Like, hey, I have a friend's band. I know this band from a little bit outside of the area that would play. I'm trying to recall who put us in touch. I recall talking to you on the phone. So I don't know if you. I mean, obviously that's how that's how things happened on the landline back then. But I can actually remember talking to you on the phone. I remember the Congress of Cow cassette, which all like once you would probably be this guy too. But like once we had this rotation of bands and like no matter the band, if they were playing the shows, like I would be not even spinning, inserting those cassettes in the car like all the time, like driving to work and driving here and there at the times. It was like our own little, it was just as important as all the big bands to us. So like that Congress was in my car door, of the cassette for a long time, the demo.
That's so funny.
Did you have 2 demos or 1 on cassette?
We had like an OG one what we made in our high school, and then we had the main one that we did with Badami.
See, I think I had the original. Would you say when you were playing NOISExtra shows, it was before the Badami era, or no?
I think it was like the same time. Like, I mean, that's pretty much how. And I have a feeling you talked to Barker because he was the one booking. I never did shit. Like,
So maybe it was Barker.
It was definitely Chris, I believe, because I never talked to, like, he did all the business, and then when we did Landmark, Sean did all the business. I like never talked to anybody until we were at the show. Then I was like more personable there. I forget when we recorded that, but it was like it was all really very so close to each other of us playing shows with you guys in like I keep saying Extra TV. NOISExtra, yeah. So
and like you're saying, I feel like maybe because it was such an impressionable era, a lot happened in the couple years, and maybe it was a few, maybe it was 3, maybe it was a few, but like the Threadline era, I don't think was that long.
I think like that was like the thing I was looking at too when you were talking about in the email. You were saying like a bunch of stuff you did, because I definitely want to talk about Engineer Records because there's so much there too. But I felt like Threadline was only a couple years because I think it was like the same life existence as like when we were Congress of Cow.
Okay, yeah, and you and I didn't connect after that. Was Lane Meyer right after Congress for you?
It was literally the same band. We just got 2 new members and then changed the name. So between like the band and then NOISExtra, like which one had the longevity? Or they both dead at the same time, basically?
No, I would say Threadline lasted a little extra because this is funny. So we're tying back into if I only did the shows at the Denville, the American Legion of Denville. So when I migrated to, it was the VFW of Rockaway, but it was in White Meadow Lake, Rockaway. That was the photo that you showed with Shades Apart. It was in White Meadow Lake. And we only did 2 shows there. I think after the second one, realizing like it wasn't nearly getting as many people to come out to, whether people were just like, oh, where's this? It was off the beaten path. Like, don't forget that Denville one was right on Route 46. I mean,
yeah.
It was right. Like what was there? There was a Burger King or no, Wendy's or something, right?
That was a Burger King. Yeah.
And you would go right down the half road. It's like half a road. I mean, half a block, I should say, and we were there. This one was tucked away in like the White Meadow Lake area, and there just wasn't a lot of people coming out.
That was the big thing, though. I remember playing that Shades Apart show, and I remember going to it because they were like a very known band, and
yeah, they were on Revelation at the time.
Yeah, and I was like, holy shit, this is going to be the biggest show we've ever played. This place is going to be packed. And there was like nobody at the show, and I was thinking like, this is Shades Apart though. Like, where the fuck are they? Where's the draw?
Yeah, I mean, I guarantee I thought similar. I guarantee they probably thought similar, and maybe you just get too off the beaten path. And I did what I would normally do. Like I used to put flyers at all of the local record stores, from Flipside to CD Express Denville to
Sound Exchange.
Sound Exchange, yep, to the music stores like Richie's and the mall. I used to take it to the mall and I used to put them in Hot Topic. They had a little board and they had like a little area you could put them.
I'm trying to think like, where would you? I mean, it feels like you would just go to the food court and see all the punk kids just sitting down with Wendy's or Cinnabon or the free chicken from the Japanese restaurant.
Yeah. I did the homework with it, and what can you do? I mean, you can only do so much, and I think it just bummed me out, and I just think I decided, well, let me just see if I can start getting Threadline involved in outward more. Don't focus on throwing these shows every 2 months. Because I think over that 2-ish year period, it was like every other month. I was trying to do one every other month and kind of have a pattern about it or something. And
did you have like a show in the mix that was this fucking banger?
I'm trying to think if it was the one that you guys played. The one in Denville that you guys played, not the Rockaway one.
I definitely crisscross certain venues with shows. Like I remember we played at the first Bootin' one, and we had this huge crowd, and they like kind of started moshing basically on our first song, and then it kind of died. And then the next day we played at, I believe it was the Wharton Knights at Legion Hall or something, and it was just dead, and we're like, what the fuck? But they were just, I can picture the venues. Also, I have like a bunch of photos from back then that helps me remember this stuff. And there was a photo of me and Chris like jumping in the air and just people just standing around just like with their arms folded. We're just trying to make something happen, and it just was not happening.
Not like jumping like into the crowd and you were flat on your back there. Right?
No, it was more like you just, for the first time ever, you're playing a show and you jump. Like what a feeling that was. Like, oh my God, I'm going to do it. I'm going to jump in the air now. Hope I don't look like an idiot.
Do you remember, this is why I guess maybe it'll jog your brain. We had Camber out, Camber was from Deep Elm Records, and we had them out. I want to say we either played with them twice or I had them out to the actual NOISExtra one twice. Definitely once. Did you play that one?
I couldn't even tell you, man, honestly.
Okay, yeah. I see. Actually, right here it says you did, unless someone dropped. Because I'm having a vague memory that there might have been like a double flyer, like two of the same flyer, because we had a band drop, and I was so detailed, like I wouldn't like leave the flyer up or like cross it out with a marker. I would like, I'm gonna replace it and print new flyers, even though it's 5 days away, like that kind of thing, and go back to all the same spots and replace them, just so I want to have this other band get their due. Like I want their logo on there, The one that you guys played in Denville, the whole bill was a Gern Blanston band, all natural lemon and lime flavors.
I do remember that name.
They were like shoegazy, a little bit more like My Bloody Valentine kind of band. Right? Like what a bill, right? Difference of, we have Congress of Cow, Threadline on there, a band called Venetian Flat. I'm not even sure who they are or where they came from. Honestly, I don't even remember them. Do you?
No, I don't remember that one at all.
Yeah, Venetian Flat, and then Camber. And that was in January. That was a January show, it says. And I have 90, that one is a 97.
I remember Camber from the Deep Elm compilation, the Emo Diaries.
Yep, that's them. And then they had 2 albums on Deep Elm. So the neat story about them is that they became, at least 2 of them, in the era of non-socials again, definitely were like not had our back in a way, like we didn't go out on tour with them or something, but got us an awesome show. Well, put us in touch with John of Deep Elm, then helped us press our CD. So then we had, like, instead of the CDR, we actually had a 3-song, still like a demo CD, but he actually helped us press the CD, like sent it to his pressing plant so we can get a bulk discount that he gets for his Deep Elm releases. And John actually shipped the Threadline CDs back to us, which I wish I still had the box, because it actually came not even being any part of the label. We weren't even on a compilation, but I was like, I loved Deep Elm at the time. The shipping boxes that came for the big run of CDs had, said like Deep Elm on it, because it came via their manufacturer for Deep Elm, and then it had, just said then the Threadline CDs, and everything. And I was like, that's cool. I want to save that box forever.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
And John actually, even because I was hooking up Camber with more than one show, he actually asked us back on a bill, unless the Camber guys like put in the word, I forget the lineage then. And we actually played the Cooler in New York City with Branson, Camber, a couple other label bands like Flu 13, and I'm going to try to forget the other one. But the clincher is John had headline, a non-Deep Elm, is we played with Braid. We got to open for Braid.
Oh, shit. Wow.
Yeah. I actually traded them a Threadline shirt for a Braid shirt at the merch table. And I remember like feeling a little awkward, like sitting trying to sell our shirts, and they were selling theirs. And at the time, it's like you knew Braid was a bigger indie band, but we're still all playing the cooler. But they were the ones who would be drawing, as well as maybe a couple of the Deep Elm would have a name because Deep Elm was in the city at the time. I just remember loving the fact that we were on this bill, of course, and then B, I remember like saying like, hey, like you guys want to trade shirts? I would assume at that time Braid was probably like, not really, but okay. but they whoever it was at the table was just very polite. He was just like, sure, and we traded. I still have that shirt to this day.
I was gonna say, do you still have? That's cool.
And it was it was in the era where we bought them so big. Like I think it's still kind of big on me. If not, at least it fits now.
I feel like we were all buying shirts almost like with the subconscious of knowing in the future we'd fit in them or they'd be tight then.
I'm sure, right? Yeah.
Because all of us bought those XL shirts and we weighed like 110 pounds.
Yeah. What were we doing, right?
Yeah. It was just comfy to just kind of I think from growing up wearing sweaters and all that shit my mom would dress me in, I was just like, you know what, man, I need to like breathe. I need to move around in my clothing to like feel a little more free. I wonder if there was like a free feeling to that. I don't know. So, like, did you guys ever feel? But I want to like jump into like the engineer records part of it too. But as far as Threadline goes, did you guys feel that you found your place in the scene, or did you feel like you never connected to it?
So I think that's a good question because I think up north here, I think it's a testament to why after that I think I started trying to look outward in multiple ways. Because I don't feel that I felt like there was more pop punk up here than post-hardcore, and that's why eventually Threadline started playing like the Melody Bar in New Brunswick and some of the scene down there and meeting like the guys. Well, that it kind of segued like Seething Gray, which Pete we were great friends with, and he helped us. Actually, the band after he came and helped us record what I'm trying to say down at Tracks East and helped us kind of figure ourselves out, production wise and everything. But Pete was from Grey House, which is a awesome post hardcore New Jersey band. I don't know if you were aware of or if you are now, but they get mentioned, that kind of posthumous like who were they then, where are they now kind of thing here and there. I never felt like we found a lot of similar bands up here to, maybe that like kind of got us because we were just kind of, discordant, a little weirder, a little more DC wise and et cetera. I don't know, and we were friends with so many punk bands, I guess, Indian punk and everything that it didn't really matter. But then I think I just, as you get older a little bit, you're like, okay, how do we grow this thing, or how do we really hone into a sound, and let's look outward. New Brunswick and New York City and Hoboken. And then we also started playing a bunch in Hoboken. Threadline led to another band called Standby with an E at the end. So it was a lame spelling of Standby, Standbye. It was a merge of two bands. And that band only lasted a year, but we played a pretty nice amount of shows from Brownies to Coney Island High to Maxwell's and got to open for like Game Face and Joshua and 6 Going on 7 and Aerotype 11 and just a lot of good shows that I think got us into more of the sound we were aiming for, from Threadline into Standby. And then
that's what I'm kind of like getting, because that's what I remember kind of back to the beginning when I said you sounded more indie, but I remembered for what we were doing locally in the shows that we'd show up to as the bands I was playing in, I felt comfortable because it was like this poppy thing, this kind of upbeat, like dance around kind of vibe. And so I felt like we fit into that very well. And I remember like from what I can remember, the sound that you guys had, it sounds like your place was more of like the Brownies and Hoboken and Maxwell's and all that stuff, where you're saying you're playing with Joshua, and like that seemed to be where you guys fit better.
We weren't a very good feeling band. I mean, if that, we were aggressive, if meaning in like you're saying, like dancey and hopping, and like we did play like with. Obviously with you guys, but with like Bigwig, and Humble Beginnings. We played 2 shows, if not with Humble. And I remember talking to, it was probably Heath on the phone, who helped us get into another show. Could have been like one of the Oranges or something. I'm having this memory, but definitely like New Jersey Joystick. I'm remembering these names, like, like playing with these bands, but like think of all their sounds. And then you think of someone that's a little bit more like Jawbox and Dismemberment Plan and a little bit more, and nowhere near as good, but let's just say in that realm, shaping ourselves. That's when I think the progression then happened out after those shows ended and after I tried to stop looking as local.
What's the timeline between then and doing Engineer Records or getting involved with that?
So Engineer at first was called Ignition Records in England. There was a guy named Stephen Franklin, nickname was Sid. I knew him as Sid, who got in touch, I believe. So this was the era where we did have email now, like timeline wise, it must have been 2000. And if the band, if this is, so I'm fast forwarding to Elemae. So the timeline goes from Threadline to that band Standby I briefly mentioned, where we actually started getting involved in scene of sound that we felt like we fit in. That band had a short run. From that band, still Chris from Threadline and Standby was then the guitar player in Elemae. So we stuck with each other for quite a lineage of bands. The other band we merged with was a band called Chander. They were from like the Hoboken scene, but two guys lived up in Orange County, like Port Jervis area. So we kind of had this long distance band, but we got together, once or twice a week and jammed and made that band out of it. All of those guys, minus one member, Chris Gibson, who was actually a engineer, producer, both, in Hoboken still. He did it for many years.
Which studio?
He was, everybody knows him as Gibby from Upstart Studios. That ring a bell?
Mm-mm.
Okay. And he also did live sound for Quicksand, and he was doing sound at venues as well, when he just, was looking for any sound work he can. But he ran his own studio on, I don't know, the second or third floor right on Washington Street, which is funny because he would track drums in there, guitars, and he was actually like on Washington Street, only like, a floor or two up, a couple floors up. But he actually recorded Siv's vocals for Can't Wait 1 Minute More, believe it or not. Not the whole album.
Oh, wow.
There were some other nice breaks that he had recording. He recorded Cooter, which, what's that, Autopilot Off guys, right?
I was just, it's funny. It's so random, but when you were saying you were changing your names and change the band name, but also change members to kind of just be like, all right, what's really going to start working for what your vision was. I automatically thought of Autopilot Off because they started as Cooter, and then when they changed to Autopilot Off, that's when they got on a bigger label and got on bigger tours. So it's like, for some reason, you said that, I was like, it reminded me of that because they were doing the same thing. That's so weird. Maybe
that was the defaction. Defaction? Is that a word? Defaction?
Sure. It is now.
from trying to fit in from one subgenre to another, like from punk to getting, when indie started getting a little bit more, blowing up a little bit more, etc. Maybe that was just what, bands did all around. I think even Joshua did that. I mean, you remember Joshua, right?
I do remember it. I remember their sound, but I remember the band name.
Oh, I forgot where I was going with that. Gibby, Standby.
Engineer Records, of how you got into that.
So that band Standby, bass player was Mark Cooper, drummer was Ty Kreck, and the guitar player Chris Humantoski, who was in, Threadline, Standby, and then where I'm getting to is a band called Elemae. I don't remember how. It could have been through a zine review or something, but this guy Stephen Franklin from Ignition Records over in England and I started communicating.
How did you get started communicating, though?
Ignition early on, maybe they had 10 releases out, started to assemble a Shudder to Think tribute album. Elemae did record Ex-French T-Shirt, a song for the Shudder to Think tribute.
It's my favorite. Yeah, it's my favorite Shudder to Think song.
Awesome. Yeah, and I don't think it's on the streaming platforms, and I should actually talk to David about that. You can find the digital of the Shudder to Think on the Engineer Records Bandcamp of that tribute album. There are some like Casket Lotteries on there. There are some names you'll recognize from way back that are still either doing stuff again now or just bands that were on old compilations that you're like, oh hey, they had Penfold on a compilation. Ignition had, which got guys from over here. Grade was on. Actually, Grade might have been on both comps, even the Shudder one. So Ignition was assimilating, bands from all over, Europe and the U.S. and etc. They got a cease and desist. Here's where it ties in. They got a cease and desist about the name Ignition Records because of legend. Oasis the big band Oasis management was called Ignition, like Ignition Management or Ignition Records and Management or something. And they actually David got a cease and desist to say, you have to stop using, because it's in the same region of England, you have to stop using Ignition Records by a certain date or they will press it further. So of course no one's going to want to deal with that, even as bummed out at the time as they were to have to cancel, like after, I said, like after 15 or whatever releases, you're like, crap, we already have our catalog rolling and et cetera, to now have to change everything and there was a website now, and now, we're talking about in the early 2000s, there was had to change the whole website, put stickers on all of the old CDs over top of the Ignition logos that said Ignition is now Engineer, so on. And, in distribution, you gotta try to show, in case you ever have to show that you're doing your best to change everything.
Well, it's funny you said that, because I was looking up Ignition I was Googling it, and then it came up as Ignition Records website. It says .co.uk, and it just goes to the artist page, and they've got Noel Gallagher and then Oasis.
Oh my, is that a current thing right now?
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah. See, I didn't even know that was there still to this day. So,
well, you said that it was their management company, and then they told Ignition Records they can't be Ignition Records, and now these guys are fucking late. Well, actually, let me see what the latest post was. 1 week ago. Yeah, 1 week ago they showed an Oasis video from like forever ago. I mean, that this video is from 20 years ago.
And are you saying that does that website show like a release under? Are there solo releases under the name Ignition now? Like they're doing.
If you go to it and you click artists, it goes to an artist page where it's got Stereophonics, Noel Gallagher, Courteeners, Dylan John Thomas, and then you do catalog, and it's got let's see, is Oasis on here? Primal Scream's on here.
Yeah, look at these bands. Jeez.
Yeah. It seems like an interesting connection because so long ago they told it to cease and desist as a management company. They're like, oh, wait a minute, let's now do the records. But
I'm sure, like hindsight, I'm sure it's even neat for David of Engineer. That part of the history of any kind of biography that he would ever write about an engineer is because of that, and the fact that it still is validated in existence today. That like the reason we changed was because of the Oasis management company.
So they had to like rebrand, put stickers on everything, and this was what year when this happened?
I'm going to say a roughly 2003. Could be 4.
So you're sticking with the whole scene thing, like from the late 90s into the early 2000s, and just like, are you sticking with it where you feel you're heavily involved? There was like a balance, right? Where we all, early 2000s, we're in our 20s, we're starting to either get jobs or just start work more. And there was a balance of either most like you're out of college, you didn't go to college, and then at that point it's like, you're like, okay, it's too late. And so your balance would be you work all the time and play shows or do the music thing a little bit, or you're doing the music thing a lot and then working a little bit. So like, what was your balance like for that?
Right off the top, so I still do it very, very die hard, like all the time, for better or worse, for in sickness and in health, right? Yeah, I'm still pretty gung ho about music. And in the current bands I do now. So back then, even then, like although I wasn't touring heavily, I was always hoping that like I guess, my hindsight, and this is like one of those reveals, my buddies that are in these bands know, I'm a very people person, and I was always friends first and everything. So I was hoping at some point everybody in the band would want to do it as much as I did. So even in Elemae, and when you could imagine we're on a Shudder to Think tribute in England, that parlayed into Ignition put out our first 7-inch. Now I'm getting a 7-inch of the band I'm in out in England, and it comes back with the Ignition Records UK and the Cool Clear Vinyl, the first actual record I was ever on. And it's distributed in the UK. And what 7-inches did they have? What did Ignition have before that? They had a Hot Water Music Rydell split. They had a Dead Red Sea, which are the members of Cross My Heart, and singer of Liars Academy, Ryan. They had his 7-inch. They had of a side project that was called Dead Red Sea. There was a Planes Mistaken for Stars CD. They had some nice names early on. I'm like, oh my gosh, look, we're getting our first little bit of footing. David and this is so I'm paralleling to now. I was starting to speak with David, the owner of Engineer. He said, would you Elemae like to come over and tour with Rydell? That was his band that he played guitar for. Two other guys at least in Rydell were helping him package stuff and ship out, and the days when just band members would come to his house and help do DIY record label. Send out promos, package stuff up, is what I'm getting at. And I, of course, was like, I would love to do this. I go to my band, and I guess the full reveal is, I got yeses from two of the guys. And we actually had turned into a 5-piece. I got a no from one of the guys. I can't do that at that point in my life.
Oh, for touring overseas?
For touring, yeah, for getting over there. Now, we didn't even tour in the U.S., but we were getting an offer to tour with Rydell overseas, and I'm thinking like, oh, this is what I want to do. We'll figure it out. I'll figure, let's do it. And then that's what, that was maybe a first blow, of like, okay, well, maybe if it lasts a little longer, if we get another record out, maybe it'll grow. Maybe someone will figure they want to do this more in their life.
Wait, hold on a second. So you get the offer from there. The guy was going to put your 7-inch out, or already puts the 7-inch out.
I think it was already out, yeah.
Okay, so then he's like, hey, I'm in Rydell. I want to take you guys out on tour. And you're going, yeah. And then one of the guys in the band says no, so you guys don't do the tour?
Correct. And when we were so it was my guitar player. He's still a great friend to this day, Chris. He did.
But I hate him secretly.
No, we've had a lot of life growing conversations about all this stuff over the years, and we're still friends to this day. I know that we have different goals, and did then. It wasn't easy then, and I guess I was that forever hopeful. I was like, I did start doing like double band duty kind of thing. Like, I got to start something else if I want to do this, if I want to try this. That was probably the point that I started doing multiple bands at once, just to try to play more shows and get more footing outward. But I never let go of Elemae, because they were like, remember the parallel, they were guys that grew, like Chris from my earliest bands and were multiple bands. He was my best friend, like I loved him as a person. I loved our creativity, went along the same path of evolving in sound, and we did stuff outside of the band together too. It was like, you wanted it to work out, but if back then I knew to treat the band as a business decision and not just purely follow your heart kind of thing, I probably would have made different choices.
Well, why didn't you guys just like get someone to fill on a guitar for the tour?
I don't know. I honestly don't think I thought of that as an option. Like I said, we were a one guitar band. We had added a keyboard player, like a keys player that played on one of our albums at the time. We couldn't do the sound without guitar, but like all the songs we wrote together. I don't know. It was just one of those things where we didn't treat it as a do or die business decision per se. And it wasn't until years later, not that I got that forward, but I was like, I need to find people who want to do this with me. But like, I did wind up touring England 4 times. And
okay, I did want to be like, did you finally get to fucking tour? Like, I wanted.
So here's, I guess, this could be a little bittersweet to the other guys in Elemae. It is jumping a bit. So after Elemae broke up, which was 2008 officially. Now we did we still played sporadic shows. We recorded a bunch. We recorded a whole second full length. I mean, a whole nother. We did a full length. We did an EP. We had like 2 full albums, 2 EPs, a bunch of single type tracks. We recorded a track for a Seaweed tribute album. So then we did a Seaweed tribute album.
Yeah, because you did Start With, didn't you?
No, we actually did Magic Mountain Man.
I talked to Aaron from Seaweed, and after that, I swear you sent me a link to the song.
I was so thrilled when I was like, "There's no way he's doing Aaron from Seaweed. This is awesome!" Like, I should have known you would have liked Seaweed, but I didn't know, because you and I lost touch after Congress of Cal.
But sorry, I cut you off so finally you get on tour later, but you're leading up to that, and we can jump back again to Engineer and talk more about what you did with that.
Okay, yeah. So then right before we jump. So when I say what might be bittersweet to the other guys, I know theoretically it is, and I know at the time the guys that wanted to go as a band, um, I'm sure it bummed them out. Maybe not as much as me because I was so band forward in life. Like a band. I'm sure you could identify. Maybe you'll say no, Craig. It wasn't me. It was the other guys in my band that were doing all of the pushing and connecting and contacting, etc. But the band was any band is pretty much my identity. So not being able to keep following, like being who you are aiming to be, it does hit you. It hits you hard, and you get perspective and try to rationalize. Like that was the other part of me. I guess I was, brought up to be such a family and friend and people person too that I didn't let the bitterness get me. I just kept trying to hope for it to eventually work out. Until the band broke up. The first time that I got to go over to England, Elemae had broken up. I had done a bunch of other in between projects. I kept trying to play with people that wanted to play more. Chris of Elemae actually asked if we wanted to get together and write music again. We came together for life happened. We hadn't created music together for a while again, and we had done so much in our earlier part of our lives, our 20s and everything. Our lives had migrated back to doing something creative. Do you want to write some music? You want to, rehearse some of our songs? It was more him leading the question. I was like, I can get us some acoustic shows from, Dave of Engineer in the UK. Do you want to play Elemae acoustic shows? And because the band wasn't together rehearsing, or we hadn't been together for years then, And Chris was like, okay. So you can imagine, okay, are we, when we're going to do this and everything, and I'm in my head, is everything going to go right? That turned into us doing it. We went over and played 9 shows, acoustic shows, in a lot of pubs, a lot of just low key pubs. There was 1 or 2 all day shows, like we would think back here, just like an all day, like indie punk type of show that we fit on anyway, just because of the relation to Engineer and whatnot. Like I said, and we did it. And after we did it, and we had written a few new song ideas at that point, Chris kind of decided he didn't want to play shows again. So I think in the back of my mind, I knew Elemae wasn't going to last as it was. It's just the acoustic thing. And our bass player had already moved. He doesn't even live in this region anymore, state-wise. He moved to Denver, Colorado, and now he's in Cheyenne, Wyoming. But we decided let's record some of these new songs. And we actually did get our drummer, Dan Nolan. We got him to come up and rehearse and play drums on these new songs at the time. Cooper tracked bass. We had another buddy, Chris Smith, who was in Elemae for a short amount of time. He came and actually tracked on the newer EP. So we had a posthumous kind of EP after the acoustic tour that's called Tilling the Fallow. And then it was over again.
And you were able to do 4 times overseas. I guess what I want to do is just to kind of bookend that is really wanted, because you had said before you had tied this in your identity and you wanted to have some things happen. So it's I always like to be well, where was the win? Where was the exciting part? But you got to you got to tour overseas finally.
But that was just that one time, and I guess that was definitely, I'm not going to deny, a big moment that we did it. Would I have loved to do it as a full band or a full band as well? Yes, 100%. When that was ending, I think even before we started recording that EP, I started looking again, needing to do music with someone that wants to travel, because I still wanted to travel with music more. It made me want to do it more. I was like, I can do this. I could build this into my home life and everything. My wife and my kids, that everybody our life is okay. And I do graphic design freelance from home. So schedule wise, I don't have a boss to answer to. I'm fortunate that we have the setup that we do. My wife's always been in business. I've always been doing art and creative stuff. When we had our children, I was stay-at-home dad, stopped working for companies doing graphic design. I decided to start looking again, and pretty quickly I met a guy named Brian Hofkesang, who Do you recall that name recently from your podcast?
No.
So Brian was one of the guitar players in Dog Pound.
Oh shit. Okay.
And that's how I met Jeff,
Oh, that's so funny.
isn't it? So that's like, so I didn't know, even though all of us existed, like you said, one of your first shows or first CDs was a Dog Pound CD, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The first one I bought at a show. Actually, at first, I think it was one of the shows it definitely was one of the shows we were talking about. I think it was either the Wharton show. I think in his interview I said the Butler show, but it was right in the time where I had met you, like right around that same exact, probably within weeks or months of that time.
So I wasn't friends with those guys then, being pretty much probably because the music was different. One was punk, one was, post-hardcore. Not to go back to that story, but years later, I mean, I was like, remember all of the Aquarian show listings and stuff around at the time and flyers where I'd see Dog Pound was listed everywhere. They played so much, like one of the main Pipeline bands, and it's et cetera. So when I tell these guys that, I was like, yeah, I didn't know Dog Pound, but I know of Dog Pound, and some bands we had played with were crossover ilk, but we had never met. So when I met Brian, he was doing an acoustic project of his own called Books. He would do guitar with loops and sing with vocal and doing other kind of vocal layers, pedal based and everything. I had come out of doing the Elemae acoustic thing. We did a handful of local shows, and I think we actually played with Books on one of them, and that's where I met. Very shortly after that, him and I just started talking. He's like, hey, do you want to do a band? Do you want to do a band? I said, well, I'm looking for someone that wants to travel with music too. Like I don't want to just remain local and just be a local band. I never, I was like, I never wanted to just do that. I was like, from now on, I need to align with people that want to. If not, I know the path it's going to lead down if I don't. So Brian did. Let's just say we had a great run. That's the other 3 times I went to England. We toured as Hidden Cabins. We played 65% of our shows as a 2-piece indie duo, like indie acoustic. You could tell we came from punk rock. You could tell we came from all the stuff that we're discussing because we had a primal punkness to us, but we were creating like alternative, like indie folk Americana mix of that kind of thing, just like older guys doing that kind of thing with some abrasiveness to it. We got help sorting gigs over there, 3 times, made some friends, and eventually put together a band and put out a full band EP. And then Brian moved to North Carolina in 2018, and that's pretty much why Hidden Cabins ended, and we're still great friends. Life just moved on and to other facets. Yeah.
To that whole perspective of starting in the late 90s, playing through the beginning of the 2000s up until 2018 is where you didn't say it stopped completely, but that's where the last iteration that you were doing ended. But you got to see playing locally, from that local scene to going overseas and doing shows like that. Like, what do you see as, is there a difference, or is it still like look visually the same thing when you get up there and play?
In which location? What were you talking about?
Comparing a whole spectrum of time. Like, I know that I've gotten from, there was an excitement when I was younger. I guess that's the point what I'm trying to make is, when I first started playing shows, there was such an excitement because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I had never stood on stage besides being in plays to play shows and sing to a crowd of people that like scared me because I thought they were just so much cooler than me. And then getting confident and playing, getting on stage and like playing shows to kids that were singing lyrics back, and then later on playing acoustic in front of a crowd. It, like, I don't know, it always seemed to me that it was a very similar, like, it doesn't, the social media aspect around it changes and things like this, like podcasts that explain it. But when you're on a stage, it's like, it almost is like it never changes, like that feeling.
I get you. So I agree. I really felt singing for Hidden Cabins as much as, like, I have a band that's dwindling but never broke up is called Damn This Desert Air. I get the same vocal release and connection singing to people in both forms, and I really do. And I think it's just I'll use that word primal again, the primal addiction to connecting, trying to connect, I guess, just giving your insides out to what you have. And to me, it doesn't matter like heavy is the sound, whether it's light or massive. Heavy is the sound if you can just feel the weight of the song and what's in the room. If you're genuine and you're committing your energy and your brain and like what's going on within you and around you, if you're giving that back, if you're not giving that back, if you're giving that out, I think that's what's genuine that you're feeling. Mike, that ties into whether you're playing for 25 people or 200 people or 1,000 people.
Yeah.
Not that there's not the jaded getting bummed if you don't have anybody standing in front of you. Of course, I'm just saying style of music.
I think I like one of the reasons why I kind of got out of it is I liked the feeling. I loved playing shows and having that release, but I think as I get older, I'm like, I want people to like what I'm doing. As soon as I would start playing and no one gave a shit, I was like, I kind of don't give a shit either. It kind of made me seem it made me feel very, I like answered the question. I was like pretty much honest with myself. I'm like, why am I doing this? I'm like, I want to make this an experience and I want to feel an experience from both sides. And if I'm not getting that back, I'm like, it doesn't really matter to me. And I like writing songs. And I used to like to record them, but I just fell out of love with it.
I was just going to ask you in a reverse, in the Mike Doyle interview, do you feel that you enjoy it as much when you pick up your guitar? And I'm just saying that you do. Like you might be like, Craig, I haven't picked up my guitar in 2 months, so it doesn't mean the same thing to me. But I'm just saying, like, when you do, are you feeling what you play? Are you just going through old stuff? Are you, do you have that connection, that inspiration? And do you think that's what also would lead to performing for someone like, and I just say like, well, I used to be pop punk. If I do something, it should be pop punk because that's where I know everybody or I'm excelling in. But I don't really feel like pop punk right now. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, 100%.
So I wonder if sometimes you feel like, I don't mean now I'm using the metaphorical does one lose the inspiration if they're not feeling genuine now, as opposed to, oh, this is what I should be doing?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's like a bunch of points. Do I pick up my guitar? I picked up my guitar a couple weeks ago, and I even went to Guitar Center to see if I could get some kind of home recording thing, even though I have GarageBand, but I wanted to see if there was something a little bit more advanced that could make cooler stuff and and I have a little combo amp that's got about 60 settings of guitar sounds and things like that, and you can add all these different delays. And so I went to Guitar Center. I did a lap. It maybe took me 10 minutes, and I was like, I don't feel any urge like I used to do back in the day to sit down and play any of these guitars, any of these basses. And then when I got home, I picked up the guitar that I have and played a couple, like, little bit. I was like, if I really wanted to play live, I would have by now. As I'm playing songs, I'm going, I really never educated myself more on this instrument to open more doors to different kinds of songs that I could try to play. And I felt like there was like this barrier in front of me of just trying to be creative. And I have these old songs that I just dick around with. Like I've got 2 songs that I actually wrote, could be like Elemae songs. And I just don't give a shit to like go to like, I mean, we did a reunion show in 2018 and they want to do one again. And I'm like, I just don't fucking care to do it. Like right now, I don't know. I don't have that. I know. I just don't have that love for it anymore.
Well, you're being honest. I mean, I think being honest is better than forcing yourself, right?
Oh, totally. I mean, the podcast, I said it all the time. The podcast is my new band. This is every episode is a new song. That's where I'm getting. I love conversation. I love finding out about stuff like different stories and people I talk to. Like really what I was trying to pull out of you before is I love that you were really honest when you said I attach my identity to this, and you've been through so many bands and trying so much, and then your one goal was to go overseas, and I was like, that's exciting that you got to do it, and then but you keep doing all these things. That to me is picking up a guitar and playing it and loving it. It's having conversation now.
Yeah, it is, and nothing is easy, so I think even if you're passionate about an instrument or the band or the podcast or whatever, I think you're going to challenge yourself to keep doing it and keep doing it more. I mean, geez, I didn't, not to make the parallel. I don't know how many episodes are you up to? 200, 100 and something. What are you up to?
This is going to be, what is this going to be? This is going to be 187.
187. I just remember scanning when we were, talking about a month or could be 2 months ago now. As I, because I see the new ones come up in the feed, and I'm just like, what number is this now? And like when you actually like look at the archive yourself, you're probably just like, wow, I could just zoom out of my screen, and all those little episodes keep getting smaller and smaller as I zoom out, and they're still filling up the screen.
Yeah, I did an Excel spreadsheet on it actually, and it's got every episode up until a couple episodes ago. And I was like, "Holy fuck, man, that's so." And some of the interviews too, I'm like, "Oh my God, I forgot to talk to this person. I forgot to talk to this person." But like that to me, I almost to match it to you though. I almost felt I think I do creative things because I want one of them to hit because I think I attach my identity to it, like you were saying.
Yeah.
It's like when you're creative and you put things out in the world and there's crickets, you really have to ask yourself, am I doing this for applause or am I doing this because I love it? The thing I loved when I first started doing, and I still do this, like when I release an episode and it takes me fucking hours to edit these things, the day of, I'll download it and I'll listen to it, to see if there's any fuck ups or there's any, because sometimes I've done this and there's been like a minute pause where all of a sudden an audio piece of the audio file just deleted. I'm like, what the shit?
Oh crap.
Oh yeah, that's the worst. Or like it won't launch and that's like here and there. But I'll listen to it. I'm like, I really enjoy this thing that I'm making and I like it. And so it's kind of like if you're writing a song, if you write a song, it's I think people are bullshitting themselves. They're like, I don't go back and listen to it and like it. It's like, what's the point? You're supposed to love it, but you're also when I realized I was gonna play music, it was just to play in front of people, and I didn't love making it. That's when I was like, I'm good.
Yeah. So that does tie into the now, and I guess the comment I was trying to say is it doesn't come without stress, distress, stress of honestly that we're middle aged now. I'm middle aged. I want to do it. Wait, I'm not going to lie and say I don't want to do it as much as when I was 20. I absolutely do. So that's
awesome.
that's good and bad, right, in a way, because I have a bunch of friends and I have this scenario where we say, I remember talking to, Sean. So just to tie in, like one of my confidants, great friends I talk to every day in many different funny aspects. So, whatever, like we shoot stuff, but we don't get together. Yeah, shoot stuff. I meant like,
we just shoot things.
Wow, that just came out so weird. We just get together and shoot stuff. No, we get together and we don't even, see, now I'm even tripping over my words. We communicate. Let's just put it that way. We don't see each other a lot. He's one of the guitar players in Damn This Desert Air. To tie into the pop punk scene, he was in Paid in Full, and he was in Murciana after that.
Okay, so he was in the band with Chris Conti.
Yes, he was. Yep.
Yes. Wow, man, you do know so many people from back then.
It ties into the pop punk world, but I wasn't friends with Paid in Full back then. So again, like the worlds collided later on when that band, Damn This Desert Air, was looking for another guitar player, and I knew Murciana, which was Sean's band after Paid in Full, etc. But I just know from this pop punk forum that you and I had like reconnected because of, and when I see Paid in Full mentioned on there, I just find it so amusing that I'm like, that's Sean's old band, whenever it's mentioned and stuff like that. So why can't some of us be okay with, and I'm going to use this a broad judgmental statement, the kind of person that just does their 9 to 5 job, turns off, doesn't feel compelled to create, and is content with every night, is content with, like, they look forward to Sunday flipping on the game with a bucket of wings and some Michelob, and their mind isn't like straining beyond that. Like, why can't we just be, I'm not saying we desire to be, but like, we're just like, is there something that just compels the drive that even now, like, I just miserable without it?
Well, there's a couple things there. It's that it's funny that you said a couple times you're like, I'm an older guy. What'd you say it? I'm an old man.
Did I say that? Maybe.
Or you said I'm older. No, I'm older now.
Let's face it, we're middle aged now, or something like.
Yeah, like I feel I don't ever say that about myself. Like I never call myself like an old man or like, oh, I'm old. And I hear people do that, and it's funny because I've seen people that I'm friends with here, and they call themselves that, and they're like younger than me, and they look older than me. And I also, I don't have kids, so I know that's one thing that kind of ages you a little bit because the responsibility and just loving something and caring for something and always worrying about something like that. And then in the beginning, having no sleep. So there's that aspect of it. And I don't work for a company. Like I've worked for myself for so long. I create all the time. And so my other release is like I do this comic thing that I do, and there's all these different media things I have fun with that. So it's like I have that creative release that it just moved from playing guitar and writing music over to this other thing. But I feel that's what keeps me. And then I balance where on Sundays during football season, I go and I just sit at a bar for fucking 6 hours and jump around and watch the game and love it. And I'm like,
Look, you have a little part of that.
oh, 100%. Oh, dude, I love that. And also I live in a city where, and being a single guy at 43, I don't have any responsibility at all. That Tuesday through Sunday, and even though it's probably killing my liver, like I just go out and I jump around all these spots around town and just, go here and like have some food, or go here and have a drink, or go meet with friends. And that keeps me, I don't know, that keeps me in this like, I'm cool with this shit, but I still get that creative release from these other things. That is a nice balance.
So we're only 4 years apart.
Yeah.
So when I say let's face it, we're middle aged now. Like that's the let's face it, like we are. But yes, like I said, I was dating my only girlfriend from 16, got married at 23. When we were 30, we had my daughter. So let's just, as we fast forward, to say like I still feel. I mean, yes, I feel older, but I still feel as connected to like when I was in my 20s, as connected as to music and creating and et cetera, that I'm like, what am I, sometimes I'm like, what am I doing? And 85% of my close friends have given up, or have just, that's a negative connotation, have stopped, have navigated to doing other things to do that. But here I am, I have two long distance bands now. One is in England with, if I didn't mention, I don't know if I mentioned it to, in preface of our interview, Mike, but I'm actually in a band with David of Engineer now, and we have a 12-inch coming out in September. And that's one of the bands. And I went over to rehearse, and I told him I'll come over and do shows I mean, Mike, I want to get over to England again and play even with the new sound.
But I love that though, man. I think that you doing that is awesome. And I think from kind of what you're saying, giving up 85%, you didn't mean giving up, but I think a good majority of people, they will I think at any point you can flip a switch and then change shit. And people are like, and if someone comes to me and they give me this whole bunch of excuses, I'm like, why don't you spend that time and tell me how you can instead of how you can't? It's like, you're going to get there a lot faster. And I think people let go of that stuff, and the fact that you haven't and you keep trying is fucking cool, man.
Yeah, and I say I'm thankful, and I have the perspective to, like, some friends will say, well, you know what? And you know this, Mike, from being freelance. I was like, well, I do freelance design as well. I'm sitting at my desk. I don't have a commute well before remote working was so common with COVID and everything, like, I've went from, stay-at-home dad to this after I stopped working at company jobs. To this, to building freelance, to distributing, even, well, I mean, too long because you have to go soon, but like to even like doing a distro, I was distributing music, CDs and albums and shipping them to distributors and everything. I was trying that aspect and did that for years until I was like, I'm just spending way more money than I'm making doing this, because the physical sales of albums at the core of this time, 10 to 15 years ago, within all that, was going downhill. So then you're, all of that, like I'm trying all these different things. So some friends are like, well, the reason why you have the energy to try right now, while other friends don't, is because they're still commuting to jobs. They're not up to their own devices. They have to answer to someone. They have to commute home, then deal with their home stuff, etc. Whereas I'm kind of always involved here. So I try to create the outer world outside of that here, if that makes sense. And
makes total sense. It makes absolute sense to me, because when you work by yourself in your home in a cave all day designing shit,
you want to get out.
You need to get. Oh, that's why I said I go out 6 days a week. I'm like, I get the fuck out of my apartment, man. But like, I think to your point though, what bothers me not about you is when people, we're generalizing here, when people give you all that, well, you get this. It's going, man, I did this. I chose to do this. You could also choose to not be making music, even though you are working for yourself. And then someone would be like, I don't get it, man. You should be doing all this stuff because you have all this time. And then when you have the time, they go, well, you've got all that time, so you could fucking do it. And you're like, well, which fucking one is it, man?
Yeah, there's a lot of judgment. There is a lot of judgment that goes with it.
People can get fucked.
But it's true.
They so can get fucked. Like when someone does that shit to me, I'm like, get the fuck out of my face. Like don't project your bullshit on me. Like just because you don't want to try anything, like get the fuck out of my face.
Right. As if the alternate path is quote unquote easy. It's like you have no idea the other stress and unknown that comes with manifesting your own destiny, whether it's freelance design, whether it's music. I mean, geez, like all these worlds of creativity often aren't very fortuitous monetarily or anything. Like,
no, not at all.
And then you're questioning yourself, what are you doing? And what am I made of? And but you're still compelled to do it. And when you don't do it, you're a mess. And you translate that to other people around you.
100%, dude. I mean, there are projects that people do that are non-lucrative. This podcast, I don't make shit off of this thing. And I question myself sometimes. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? I'm like, but
I will send you that $15 Venmo when we're done. In thanks.
Wait,
No,
what
I'm
was that for? Yeah, it's like I charge people to come on. Yeah, you have to pay me $15 for me to talk to you. No, but like I've had so many great, out of 187 interviews, every single one of them, I've gotten something from it, and they like fucking juice me, man. Like there's something about getting the nostalgia part, but there's these little pockets of things that I forgot, and I'm also repeating myself a lot, which I understand. But and then I'm finding that the people I talk to have connections to other people. Like you mentioned a couple things where you're talking about situation at 1200, you're talking about Chris Baglio, and like me and Chris, I met him. I don't remember meeting him back in the day at shows, but I remember him because of Gray Sky Films. And when I started to do videography in Morris, when I was living in Morristown, I started doing freelance then, and I was doing videography. And then he had me come in, and I talked to him and his business partner Mark, and they were like super great
Mark
guys.
From Rocket Science. Wow. Yep.
And Chris was like the nicest guy. And then he was, it could have been this competition thing, but he's like, oh, it was in like the Jersey scene back in the day. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. And then we talked about, then I found out that he was in situation at 1200. And then, I talked to Scott, and then I ended up talking to, and you talked about Pensy Prep. And I talked to Neil Sabatino, and he's been sponsoring this thing forever because he was in Pensy Prep.
Yeah, and that's great. And like you, I had befriended Neil so many years later after that. He was doing that Reinforcement Records, and he was doing Pensy Prep when he started throwing shows at Stosh's. Those for his Mint 400 shows at Stosh's Beer Garden up here. I know you're not.
I don't.
I know you're in North Carolina, so you might not know. But like that's when I met him again. I must have been Hidden Cabins like era, and it was like, Neil, like no way. The respect that I instantly had when I just saw what he was about. Like I didn't know about his whole record label and all the distribution that he gets with and how much he put. I felt like a parallel universe, like as far as like distro and label stuff and all, and keeping at it with bands, and I'm like he is probably same age, at least in the pocket as us, right? And still living it. I mean, that's what he loves. I know he has a day job per se, but let's just say he's living what he loves,
And he also, and just because he always sponsored this, he has over 400 releases that he's done on the label.
Awesome, yeah.
That's crazy. And I mean, to throw money into that, I mean, if you throw any kind of money into this music world, unless you're a manager or you're a booking agent or you're a label or you're like a producer, like you're not making money, man. But you're doing it because you fucking love it, and the fact that to just really tie this up is in full circle. It's really, I appreciate that you have done, and also, do you know who Omar Rodriguez is at the Drive-In?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I don't know personally. You meant like of them,
but like just of him.
Sure.
Yeah, he's got like so many bands, and when you're like, you kept naming all the new bands, I'm like, you're like the Omar Rodriguez of New Jersey. Like
there's a lot of
so many different bands, man.
A lot of bands, and maybe this will tie into the comment about like appreciation, and as hard at times and fall apart and fall out moments, I appreciate the people I play with, the bands that I'm in. I mean, had done, and the music that was made. Do I wish there were different results sometimes? Yes. Has there been the chosen, not the chosen, has there been, I'm sorry, the select few that have I actually feel burned or screwed over? Yes, there's a few. But amongst the whole batch of trying bands and many different sounds, I say like I've retained a family because of it. I've retained friendships that are long lasting. The some of these new ones that feel so great. I'm like, I don't know what my life would be without the music scene that did start, that I did find, not did start then, that I did find from my 20s, because even in like even in freelance design, most of my work is music based from friends, bands, and singer songwriters, and this and that, and people who are looking for show posters, and most like let's just say 3/4 of my world outside of like family, all have to do with music, and those I've met and become have this bond with along the way. It's so special that I couldn't even imagine not having that. That's that community.
Do you want to? So I typically, this would be a good point to stop, but leading us up. But do you want that to be your scene ethics answer, or do you want me to re-ask that after I ask you to plug something?
I'm good with that being my answer. If you're gonna place it in the right spot, is that what you're saying?
No, I've never done it before. I've always asked it, and then someone gave me the answer, but you gave me the answer before, and this would be the first time. I think it'd be kind of cool. I'm going to leave this in as I'm saying it, but you answered that question before I asked it. So that's your scene ethics
Perfect.
answer. Cool. All right. So then we're going to end it with you giving a plug. What would you like to plug? It could be about you. It could be about a friend. It could be about both.
What can I plug?
I mean, you have like 50,000 bands. So, I mean,
wow. I think what I'd love to have anybody that listens to this podcast check out now is one of the current bands that I'm doing is called the Atlantic Union Project. The feeling, the vibe within the band, to me, just brings me back 20 years. It's a cross-ocean band, 4 guys from the southeast of England, myself over here. We've made an EP that's going to come out, and it just, to me, has the spirit of the youth and the sound and energy of what we are now, but taken from what we were then. So that's it.